Okay, it looks like it's 6:35 on October the 12th, 2022. I need to call the Board of Adjustments into order. Right, looking here. So this evening, I guess our first thing is to administer the oath within the statement for the elected and appointed officials, the newly reappointed members to the board. I'm going to step it up. We also going to be electing a chairman and a vice chairman here after we do that. So, Susan, you going to do the oath?
Yes.
With the new people?
I handed, so I'm just going to go over what each sheet is first, and then we'll just all read that together at the same time. And this one is your oath, where we'll read it, and then you'll just sign that very first line right there. And this is the statement of elected appointed officer, and you can just read it and sign it. We're not going to read it out loud. And then this is your confidentiality form, and this is for open records request if you want your information to be confidential. And I believe part of it the top part has to do with your email, and the bottom is your phone. One's phone number, one's email, but you can look through it. And then if you want to be confidential, but you want to allow other board members to have your information, you can give that out to them. You can check this little box at the bottom. Other members of this board. If we want to just, does everybody have their in front of them? We'll all just read at the same time, if that's okay?
Yes.
Is everybody ready? Okay, go.
I, Stanley Potter, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of the Board of Adjustments, the City of Rowlett, State of Texas, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God.
Perfect, thank you. And if you fill them out and want to hand them back later, whenever, I'll get your copies back to you at the next meeting.
David, can we go around the room and have each person introduce himself, or is that we have the agenda specifically?
It's not an action declaration. I don't need that.
Okay. Maybe if we can take and do that now after you finish signing. Maybe start, I know Brownie, and go around to everybody in the room. Just introduce himself to the rest of the room.
Yeah, I'm Brownie Sherrill.
Chris Barber. Thanks for your background. That's helpful.
A little more, please, Brian.
Well, a little about you.
No, don't worry about it.
Okay. See, Chris, you're an alternate, correct?
That's right.
Okay,
I'm Joshua Houston, I'm the alternate.
thank you.
John Doherty, I'm an alternate.
John?
Christina Cook, alternate.
Tony Schmitz, full-time member. Stanley Pollard, newly appointed.
And I'm Ken Romaine, and I'll apologize unless I work with you for a little while. I'm not going to be great on the names, okay? All right, the next item I have on the agenda is 1B, is every year we can do this to elect a chair and a vice chair for the 2022-23 term. Open for recommendations and seconds, and we need to vote on that. We'll go for the chair. We'll do that first. Anybody want to recommend someone?
Nominate Ken Romaine. Romaine as chair.
I guess we need a second or something like that.
Second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Your day will come. And I guess we need to vote. Okay. I guess we need to have a vote. I guess a majority on that. Yeah.
All those in favor?
All in favor, I guess. Okay, good. What, 3? Okay. So, anybody against that? So I guess voting member wise, we're in good shape on that. Shucks.
Could you tell me the motion? I didn't hear.
That was for voting for chair for the next years.
Who made the motion?
Oh, the motion,
Okay, thank you.
and Stanley.
Oh, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith.
Okay, I got it, thank you.
And the second was, yeah,
I
okay,
got it.
I'm sorry.
I'll second.
And now for Vice Chair. You have a motion for Vice Chair?
Make myself the vice chair.
Let's see why not. So we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Vice Chair,
Joe.
Tony, and it was seconded by Brownie. My brain working today. What's his name? You know, I've got seen you around too many years. Okay, we need to make a vote on that. We have a first and a second. This is for Vice Chair. Anybody affirmative for Vice Chair? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 for that. You get that, Susan?
Got it.
Okay. And now we're to item 2. This is to convene to an executive session. The board will convene to an executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071 to consult with the attorney to seek legal advice with the city attorney regarding legislation updates and board actions. So we'll have the room closed for about 30 minutes. Anyone who's not a board member can move on over into the main chambers, and we'll holler at you as quick as possible. Okay, so we're all here now. Welcome. We just completed our executive session. Sorry we were running a few minutes late. We're going to convene to a regular meeting of the Board of Adjustments. It's currently 7:42 p.m. on October the 12th. Welcome all. First thing on our agenda is citizens input. I have quite a few items tonight for citizens input. And please help me if I butcher names. I'm not great on that. On citizens input, we are not allowed to speak back to you. We can only listen. A very important aspect of that. We have 3 minutes. And I'm going to probably need some help with some of the pronunciations. Mr. Charles Holt, wish to speak in 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself and bring the front.
For the applicants, do I speak now or during their presentation?
Okay, here's the public hearing. Wait a minute, I read these wrong. These are all public hearing. All right, my mistake. Okay, these what I have here all public hearing, now citizens input. Now, do we have anyone in the audience for citizens input then? Anyone here for citizens input? These here I have are all public hearing.
We need a form.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody here. Is that just for public hearing or citizens input?
Public hearing.
Okay. Okay, not seeing anybody here for citizen input. We're going to move on to the next section on the agenda. Next section I have is to consider the approval of the Board of Adjustments meeting minutes from August the 10th, 2022. Board members, you've read and reviewed those. Do I have a motion to approve? Tony, second? Donna, second. We need to vote. Come up.
Gonna try again? No, it's, yeah, there we go.
Okay. Mr. Hull, yeah, one more.
I abstained because I was not here.
That's good. Okay, the motion to approve carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening is to conduct a public hearing on the request from Mark and Margaret Taschek, excuse me on the pronunciation, for a variance on section 77-400 of the rock wall the Rowlett Development Code to reduce the required setback of 5 foot on the side yard from accessory structure to 0. Subject property is located at 6602 Warwick Drive. Okay. Does the citizen have the city has a presentation? Okay. Yes. Mr. Jackson, welcome.
Good evening, board members. Waiting for the presentation to queue up. Okay. So a little background on this case. The subject property is zoned planned development for single-family uses. Based on the information provided by the applicant, an attached accessory building was constructed on the north side of the main building in 2004 for the home. Although a building permit was not required at that time, the minimum 5-foot side yard setback was required as prescribed by the Rowlett Development Code. In 2016, the existing accessory structure was expanded to approximately 216 square feet in area. And this included the installation of a metal roof and overhead door. Now, at the time of the expansion, the adopted building codes exempted accessory buildings that were less than 200 square feet from permitting requirements. However, because the accessory building did exceed 200 square feet, a building permit was required, but it was not obtained. Compliance with the minimum 5-foot setback is required regardless of permitting requirements based on the size of the building. Furthermore, the structure is located or installed on the fence property line, which conflicts with the setback requirement of 5 feet. The fence and the resident elevation serves as existing walls. The setback violation was brought to the city's attention in 2021. A letter of notice was sent out by myself on December 15, 2021, notifying the property owner of the violation. And an additional notice was sent out a few months later on July 1st, 2022, stating that the structure was required to be removed or brought into compliance no later than August 15, 2022. And the property owner subsequently submitted a variance request on October 14, 2022. Now, what the code states is that an unattached one-story accessory building cannot be installed less than 3 feet from an interior side lot line when it's located at least 90 feet behind the front lot line. Now, because this accessory building is located approximately 79 feet from the front property line, and it's attached to the main structure, the 3-foot setback requirement is not applicable for both of those conditions. If either condition existed, then the 3-foot setback is not applied. So it falls back into the main 5-foot setback, which is the minimum requirement of 77-400 of the Rowlett Development Code. Also, whenever you look at 77-303 C3 A7 of the RDC, it states that an accessory building between 120 and 500 square feet that is enclosed must have exterior walls constructed with weather-resistant building materials other than metal, including the roof. If the primary structure of the lot has a metal roof, the accessory building may also have a metal roof or similar type. And a building permit is also required by that section. So, in addition to And I think at this point, what we had talked about on a staff level was that what are all of the issues involved with this? And I think that the main thing that I want to make sure that the board understands is that the variance request that's being requested tonight is a 5-foot side setback variance. They're requesting that the variance be reduced from 5 feet to 0 feet. The board will not be looking at any of the other issues that we have seen, such as fire code issues, building code issues, which both require additional regulations. If the board does grant a variance, staff will be compelled to require compliance with those regulations if a variance is granted. One issue that we do want to bring up as well is that the wall structure appears to be built on the property line, and the roof does appear to be overhanging across the property line, and which does allow for water to discharge on the property. However, that issue will not be considered tonight. That is not something that the board would consider, and that is something that staff will have to verify and comply, or verify compliance with, is that there is no encroachment across a property line or any type of violation of the property line encroachment. So, in your consideration of this variance request, the board can approve a variance with an ordinance if it would result in unnecessary hardship. One item would be a financial cost of compliance. If the compliance is greater than 50% of the appraised value of the structure as shown on the most recent appraisal rolls certified by the assessor of the municipality under section 26-01 of the tax code. 2, compliance would result in a loss to the lot in which the structure is located, at least 25% of the area on which the development may physically occur. 3, compliance would result in the structure not being in compliance with a requirement of the municipal ordinance, building code, or other requirement. 4 is compliance would result in the unreasonable encroachment on adjacent property or easement, or the municipality considers the structure to be a non-conforming structure. In this case, it is not a non-conforming structure. It's not. It's an illegal structure that was built that never did comply with the ordinance. Notifications were sent out on September 26, 2022. 200-foot notices sent were 18. 1 person, we did receive 1 opposition, 2 in favor. 500-foot notices were sent via email. There were 37 notices. There were 0 in opposition and 2 in favor of the 500-foot notice. Recommendation. Staff is recommending denial of the variance to reduce the 5-foot setback requirement for accessory structure to 0 feet. And I won't bring up the remainder of this because that is something that staff will have to enforce and verify at that point. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to make a brief comment. We have our full members, which will be voting here on the diocese. We invited, as we have been customary, our alternates to sit and take place in discussion, but they will not be voting. Okay? So you're kind of looking at plaques and counting faces. That's why it looks a little bit different. Okay, at this point, we've had a presentation from the city. In the public hearing, we have a number of people who wish to speak. Again, the city has a, okay. Sorry for paramedic here. Applicant is present in the meeting. Yes. Do you have a presentation you'd like to give?
Yeah.
Please come forward, state your name and address.
I'm the attorney for the applicant. May I assist him because of the hardship involved?
Yes. It's fine, thank you.
Let me introduce my client, if you will. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark Ashley, 6602 Warwick Drive.
Maybe try to speak to the mic when you have ability. Thank you.
Mark Ashley, 6602 Warwick Drive.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I'm going to assume you guys have read the narrative, or do you want me to go through them? Or,
I haven't read it. It's your prerogative if you wish to present it. It's your choice.
it's a little long. So, a little history. So, we moved in the neighborhood in 1999. We were politely asked by our adjacent neighbors at that time to not build a wooden fence or anything higher than 4 feet or sheds or anything in the backyard that would block their view of the lake. So we agreed. In 2004, the original shed was constructed. The shed sits on the north side of the residence in the side yard and utilized the existing structural privacy PVC fence as one of the walls. The width of that location was only 7 feet 3 inches. So we chose that location in deference to our neighbors to keep from blocking their view in which their properties border. At that time, it was Hal Whitfield, which he is no longer there. So we sought permits in 2004, but we were told by the head building instructor at that time, Blake Scott, no permits were required. So we went forward and built the structure. So it should be noted that at regular times, and I believe it was in the package, I did pull out permits for several different things. So, accustomed to pulling permits. One was not pulled because I was told it was not required. So the shed was built using structural PVC material, including PVC fencing as a structural part. We chose PVC because it's virtually indestructible. It's super low maintenance. It is fire retardant. It will not burn. If you take flame away from it, it stops burning. That information was provided in the packet upload. In 2016, the shed was upgraded with a better roof and a custom door, basically for security to keep people out. But the basic location of the shed remained the same. 2019 implementation of ordinance 03619. Rowlett understood the proliferation of shed setback issues and changed the ordinance in December 2019. So up until that point, the city knew they had problems, permits weren't required, so they've changed that. So since 2019, permits should be required for everything going forward. That is ordinance 36019. Rowlett is not actively pursuing the proliferation of sheds. So anything that was prior to that, it's out of sight, out of mind, except for everything going forward. Examples of sheds were in that packet, which are in distance from my house, 1.5 blocks. And I think I came up with over 20, very, very short distance. So there are a lot of sheds that violate these issues. Current issue. We find ourselves in the current situation due to my neighbor, Mr. LJ, who moved next door in 2020. So he has harassed us on many occasions, one of which is the shed's non-compliance issue. It should be noted that in no way does this impede Mr. LJ's enjoyment of his property or the beautiful view of the lake. that it was built in that location and the way it was for that purpose in general, not to be intrusive, not to look terrible, not to need maintenance, doesn't require painting or anything of that matter. The shed's been in place for 18 years with no objections from any of the neighbors. You can see letters of support, 17 of them that are in the package, up and down, out to 300 feet away. A lot of them state, no there, it's not a problem. Some of them have said they didn't even realize it was a shed because it blends in so easily. So we believe our current neighbor is disgruntled because he possibly received several citations from Patrick, who happened to be out
We're going to
inspecting.
object to the extent, my client is not harassing him, and this is not appropriate related to his variance.
Then we would have an official.
It's his application, this isn't a court, the rules of evidence don't apply, and subject to any rules that this board may oppose, he can say pretty much whatever he wants.
I'm just trying to say, lay some groundwork as why we're actually here. So, we actually had nothing to do with the neighbor either having to get permits or anything. The issue was that I needed some work done down in the lakes front. The city wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, so I had to have the building inspector come out and look so he could understand what I was trying to do. On the way back, he happened to notice building materials and asked me what was going on with the neighbor, and I said, I don't know, we have a new neighbor. And the young man basically got on his work cell phone, found there were no permits. What happened after that, I don't know. But since then, it's just been constant. Your shed's in violation. Your pad down here is in violation. The letters from the city that were sent out in 2015 were actually sent out to the wrong address and were returned to the city, return center. So I actually didn't get that first notice for almost 2.5 months later. At that time, it had the shed issue and a pad issue. At that time, I was working with the city on the pad issue, which was actually part of Dallas. While it says there was no permit, I actually provided them a permit from 2004, 18 years ago. City of Rowlett does not keep any permits past 5 years. They're all gotten rid of. So it took some months to work through that process. So that was laid to rest. But then we were back to the shed variance. So I've actually gotten 2 surveys, one for my house and one for the take area, to prove that everything is on my side of the property, and it is. Conclusion. Because the shed was originally built prior to permits, the current 5-foot setback surface area was not known at that time and should be grandfathered in as compliant. The minor changes in 2016 didn't significantly alter the shed, its position, therefore it shouldn't have caused a setback or a size provision of the code to apply to a grandfathered structure. However, considering that the 5-foot setback was approached to reduce fire hazard to adjacent residents, it is fair to consider this aspect. Because the shed was constructed primarily of PVC and is fire retardant, it is not a fire hazard to the residents, and much less a fire hazard than a dry wood fence. Furthermore, if denied, it would need to be constructed another shed to store yard and maintenance items. The cost to construct a new shed elsewhere on the property with the same standards would be significant, and it would block the neighbor's view. The backyard that faces the lake has a 40-degree slope, which there are pictures in your packet to show that. Basically, on the end of that slope, for me to build a flat shed, I would have to have 5 feet of backfill, which would be next to impossible to keep maintained. So we require retaining walls, and it would be very expensive and very difficult to maintain it. That kind of, build up. Because of that expense and the hardship to build it there, the current location was selected because it blocks the home's view and it was a flat surface. Other than that, I have no other place to put a shed that will not either bother Mr. Jorge or Jose, who lives on the other side of me. Somebody's going to get their view blocked. So removing 5 feet from the shed wouldn't change the appearance from the street, as it's built as a privacy fence, the structural part of it. Removing that, the fence doesn't change. It stays. All it does is it moves 5 feet out of it, I end up with a 2-foot shed, which is useless. Also, putting a 5-foot setback in there would create a security risk for a residence, where vandals could get into that blind area and would allow them access to the home. We did have a neighbor about 6 doors up have that happen some years ago. During the middle of the day, somebody jumped their privacy fence and had access into their house. There's nothing to be seen. So, criteria to consider for the variance approval. Required variance on 5-foot setback to 0 and the square foot limit for the 200 shed. The current shed takes into consideration the neighbor's view corridor, which is an ordinance of the city. It cannot block any view corridor. It is fire retardant, and it is also fire retardant. Special conditions and hardship. The current shed has been in place for 18 years with no complaints, 16 or 17 letters of support. If waivers not granted, the shed will be rendered useless. Substantial loss of cost specialized material would be lost and not reusable. The disposal of non-biodegradable materials in landfill, loss of protected storage for woodworking equipment, tools, saws, lawnmowers that are currently in there. Substantial cost. A replacement shed in that 40-degree slope area, I've been quoted in excess of $20,000 because of the slope to backfill it, build a retaining wall, substantial cost. Home security would also be compromised if the 5-foot setback had to be enforced. The current shed has no effect on the public, the city, or neighbors. It increases safety and security for the homeowner by not allowing blind spots for intruders to gain access to the home. There is no other suitable flat location or location that does not block neighbors' lake view. No city or service provider is affected by this variance. The shed is fire retardant. The proposed variance has no impact to anyone or any property. Suitability of property is only enhanced with a nice, low-maintenance shed that does not block the view. It does not need painting. It will not rot. It has a 50-year lifespan. It has also been looked at by the Rowlett Fire Chief, found to be sound and secure. There has also been a conference call with city staff and senior management that taking care of the city's issues that Dale talked about, water. I have agreed to the city that will be taken care of. The shed, I can guarantee through surveys, is on my property. The roof, the metal roof does hang over about 1.5 inches. That will be remedied to the satisfaction of the city. Email has been sent and agreed upon. The bordering wall, which is also the privacy fence, that will be, as stated there, that will be made into a UL 1-hour fire-rated wall. The city has agreed that those are the only issues they have with this. Water discharge and that rating of that wall, both of which I have agreed to correct. Substantial justice would be done by granting this variance, as the city has agreed to accept the updates to the shed as discussed in the conference call of October 6th. I respectfully request that you grant my variance for a 5-foot setback on the shed as built, as it has remained in there for 18 years with no complaints from multiple homeowners that have lived in that particular property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Your comments?
If I may, I have some brief comments. My name is Charles Hope. My office is in Rockwall. The applicant has tried, he's acted in good faith. He moved here in 1999, like he said. In 2004, when he originally put this structure up, best I can determine from looking at the ordinances, the development code wasn't adopted until 2006. We have to feature that adopted ordinance for this 2006. So there was not a setback requirement because there was no development code. He did enlarge the structure in 2016. At that point, there obviously was a development code, but the city basically didn't require strict adherence. And in fact, in the December 17, 2019 ordinance that you referenced in the application, the city says, whereas the lack of a permit requirement has resulted in proliferation of accessory structures that often violate building setback requirements or that are constructed within rights of way, all of which could have been avoided by a permit review and approval process. This is December of 2019, years after the slight enlargement was done. So there was no intentional violation here. This board is often referred to as the common sense of the city. You are vested with the discretion to make these type of decisions regarding variances. If you see fit to grant this variance, that will meet building code requirements, fire code requirements, to work with the city. He's already started that dialogue. So I would request that you consider the tremendous hardship in the loss of this building and the greater than $20,000 given the yard, the way that it slopes, that cost to replace it if you could. You would then block sight lines of his neighbors potentially. So I'd ask you to exercise your discretion and grant the variance, let him work with the city to alleviate any water issues, any visual encroachment. He knows he will take that 1.5 inches off of a very easy process, rechannel the water that would work completely within his yard. He'll work with the fire marshal, with the fire code issues. So again, there's a lot of structures like this that were built during this time period. He didn't intentionally violate any rules. The city didn't notify him about any rules that just here recently. So I would ask you to recognize the history of Rowlett in this area, and use the discretion that's been granted to you to grant the variance. If you've got any more questions, do you or my client, we'll be happy to respond.
At this point, we're basically just soliciting, listening. Yeah. So, we appreciate your input. I think we're time to move on to other pieces of this, public hearing.
Thank you very much.
Hey, at this time, I think it would be appropriate to call, for the public hearing, Laura Candidate Lewis. You let the board know what you're representing and what you're here for, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you. My name is Laura Campbell Lewis. Thank you for volunteering your time for these important matters. I represent Mr. and Mrs. Elgin, who live at 6606 Warwick Road. And they're the next door neighbors facing this structure. And they are opposed to this structure. While this structure was originally constructed in 2004 or 6 or sometime around that time, it was significantly expanded in 2016. As I understand it, it's now, according to what it appears like from our view, 8 feet by 29 feet, whereas it is our understanding it was much smaller when it was built. And despite the presentation we heard, the city's presentation made clear that in 2016 that a permit was absolutely required for a structure of this size, and the 5-foot setback was in place at that time. And so this structure meets absolutely none of the permitting requirements. And without any disrespect to our neighbors who certainly have a right to voice their approvals and consent, if my client lived 300 feet away from this structure, he wouldn't be here opposing this either. The problem is he lives right next door. The water sheds onto his property and digs ruts in his ground and leaves a big mess for him. He's the one who lives next to this fire hazard. This is a foundation that's never been inspected. It has electrical that's never been inspected. We don't know if any city officials have been inside to see what all is in there or what the deficits are. And while I understand the applicant believes that vinyl fencing is an awesome exterior building material, people more qualified than the applicant have never cited that as an approved exterior building material under any building code. It's fencing. And while there are vinyl siding products, this is not what has been used here. And so we ask that you consider this as a broader picture. One, it creates a hardship on my client. And while the applicant talks about the discussions he's had with the city and how he'll meet certain obligations with the city, those 2 or 3 items that he listed failed to address the vast majority of the items outlined in my letter or brought forward by the city. A setback variance doesn't address the inspection problems, the inappropriate building materials, the fact that it's no matching roof. I know that seems silly, but it's not. This is a nice neighborhood where people, for that matter, I looked up the value of the applicant's property. It's $540,000. He has a $540,000 home with a composition roof that has a corrugated metal roof on this shanty shed beside it that feeds water off onto my client's property. So my client doesn't feel like that adds value to the neighbor's property values or his. We think that is unreasonable. And there's no requirement that he's going to make it architecturally complementary.
Okay, our 3-minute, wrap up real quick if you can, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I went over. I will call to your attention that the market value of this property is $540,000. 25% of that is significantly more than the $20,000 cost of this shed. And quite frankly, I can't understand how this structure can be brought into compliance for less than $20,000. It seems that it would be in everyone's best interest for this variance to be denied and the shed removed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, the first two speakers, first gentleman, pleading his case for the property, and the second person had an unusual interest, I would say. We do have a 3-minute rule for the remaining people. I think we've got about 8 or more people who want to speak. First name we've got is Darwin Smith. If you could let us know your name and address in 3 minutes, please.
Sure. My name is Darwin Smith. I live at 6506 Rowlett Drive, which is about 3 or 4 houses down from Mark's house. And just want to give my perspective. Give my perspective. We were the first house to be built in the neighborhood, the first ones to move in. My wife and I were our first 2 kids. And I just had no idea that there was a shed behind when Mark moved in. And afterwards, I just never had an idea that there was a shed back there. It just looked like a vinyl fence to me, and really didn't see. And Hank went by the other day to check it and look at it again from that perspective. And it looks like a fence. It acts like a fence. From my perspective, just driving through the neighborhood, it doesn't detract from the property value as I can tell. And I just wanted to give my thoughts and request that the variance be given. Thank you for your time.
Appreciate hearing from you. Next I have is Charles Holt. Excuse me. We've already got you in. Thank you. Maul keeps me straight here. Douglas Johnson. If you could just state your name and address, please, Mr. Johnson.
My name is Douglas Johnson. I'm at 6514 Warwick Drive. And in the consideration of time, I think most of us are here to support the variance. And it might be wise just to take a vote to see those that support it, rather than take up the time of everybody going forward and saying we approve it, we accept it, we want it, and all that. And you've got the discretion to approve the variance as a 0 lot line and to be able to require a permit and bring a structure into compliance with the existing code. And that would be my recommendation, that we go forward with something with the city approving it on a Board of Adjustment and then complying with the existing building code and fire code and move forward. Thank you.
Appreciate your input.
Anybody want to just vote in favor?
Okay. Next one to speak is Mr. Don Brown. And again, you all can use as little or as much of your 3 minutes as you wish.
My name is Don Brown. I live at 9806 Chasefield Drive. I'm about 4 to 5 houses down around the dog leg. Unlike something that was mentioned a minute ago, I'm going to apologize to you for taking up your time on something of this nature. I've been walking my dogs and my kids around the neighborhood for 28 years. I didn't even know Mark had a shed until we went over and looked at it after I found out about this situation. If you don't get a variance on this, are you going to go out to all the rest of the sheds in the city? And then we're going to look at retaining walls, fences, swimming pools, if city council decides that in the interest of conservation of water, we're gonna make a swimming pool limit of 3,000 square feet and dig up all the other swimming pools? I mean, really? I don't think so. I think that we've got a problem here between a couple of homeowners is what the situation is. I've had 6 homeowners beside me and loved all of them but one. Unfortunately, occasionally you have belligerence and antagonism from one single person, and you hope that they'll just move along. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they decide to take up the time of a whole lot of city people and spend a whole lot of my money, because it's my money that takes care of the city, right? Right? Well, Mark is always spending a whole lot of money on this, a whole lot of paperwork, and a whole lot of wasted time for you folks. I need to go and give him the variance. Thank you.
Appreciate it, sir. I have a, here we go, Leonardo Renee, and I don't want to push your last name, sir.
Don't worry about it, nobody can pronounce it. Not even my wife.
And I'm so bad on names.
It's Leonardo or Renee Izaguirre, or Izaguirre if you don't speak Spanish. I live at 9713 Rockdale Drive, and so I have a unique position because area because a lot of the people that have spoken, they're on the same side. And so they're on the side, and so his house is here, and their houses are here, and then everybody else's houses are this way, and so forth. I live around this way, Kearns Corner. My house is right there. There's only 2 houses between us, and so I can see both houses from my front yard. So it's not like I'm looking down and I can't see anything because all the houses are blocking. I can see that. I didn't know he had a shed until he brought it up to me, and I've been there 21 years. So. I'm in support of it because of the variance, because, I mean, again, I didn't even know I didn't know it was a shed at all. Didn't even notice it was there. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Lisa, Parigi, excuse me. Yeah, state your name and address, please, in 3 minutes. Use what you wish of it.
My name is Lisa Parigi. I live at 6510 Warwick. I'm about 3 houses down from Mark. I don't know about all these compliances and regulations and laws. What I know is compliant. And we have a very friendly, open, welcoming neighborhood. I mean, there's no problems in our neighborhood, you know? I hadn't heard of any until this time, okay? And Mark is the neighbor of the neighborhood. He puts everybody together. There's never been a time that I haven't called on Mark for help that he hasn't come. And he's meticulous, he does a good and thorough job, and he cares about his neighbors. I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. There are things at our age that we cannot do. Mark's a little younger than us, and he's there for all of us, and we all look to him. And that's the kind of neighborhood that we live in. Now, my preference would be that we could have some more compliant attitudes. I think this thing probably has just gotten a little out of hand. We can solve problems without having to go to these levels. It's happened so many times with people who aren't satisfied to sit and work things out. This seems like a very workable situation to me. I mean, what does he not like about that building? What does Mark need to do to make him happy? Is there anything Mark can help him with? And I guarantee you, Mark would have been over there helping him way before now. Okay? Asking him what he needs. And what this gentleman needs to realize is he has not moved onto an island. The only island here would be one of his own making. But I think it would be better, and I think it's what everybody would like, is if he would be a part of us. And I didn't see that happening. We got some tit for tat going on. And you know, we all live on that lake, and we can block anybody's view we want to. Okay, I could build something, I could plant trees, I could totally block some people's view. But I'm not going to do that. We bought that property for the lake. We understand that about each other. And I would just wish that this matter would be dropped and that they could work this out. I think it's workable.
Okay, thank you. Brian Abrams. Give Mr. Abrams your name and address, please, for the records.
Brian Abrams, 6517 Warwick. I moved in '97. Have known Mark since he's moved in. Have seen the shed and see no problem with it. He builds things with quality. He takes pride in his work. I'm going to ask that you give him his variance. Something that hasn't been mentioned in all this is our neighborhood doesn't have a homeowners association, and I moved in with that, knowing that, and saw that as a good thing, and not being controlled, being told by other neighbors what we're doing, how you're going to do it. And I think a lot of these people that moved in even before me, like Darwin, saw that as well. And I think we're losing sight of some of that in our neighborhood because of that, with these little issues where people just want to be left alone and do their thing, and Mark didn't do anything that was out of the ordinary. That if you drive around, you'll see all these other people with the various issues, I would say, and nobody's complaining about those. You buy as it is. You move into the neighborhood, you have a choice. That's why I asked you to give him his variance.
Thank you, sir. John Perry, okay, thank you.
I guess it's my wife. Thank you. My name is John Parigi. I live at 6510 Warwick Drive, 3 doors down from Mark. My wife and I moved in 2013, October, 9 years ago today. The building's been there as long as I've been here that I know of. I've actually been in the building. Everybody keeps saying they don't know much about it. I've actually been in it because I needed some help doing something one time. Mark said, hey, I got the thing in here, come on in here, let's get this done. He's got a tool in there, a saw that I need, that I didn't have. Mark's been that way. He's been that way with the whole community. Look around you. You've got a whole community of people that live all around Mark. And every one of them has talked to you about what Mark does. That shed has been what he keeps the things that he helps those around him with. And this whole community is that way. We all work one with each other. I'm a professional. I travel a lot. I travel a lot in my job. When I travel, Mark has key to my house. He is an honest, straightforward, hardworking man, willing to do whatever he needs to. I've never called Mark and asked him for anything that he has not helped with and taken care of because I was not available to do it, as my wife talked about a while ago. This, I think, has been said, is a waste of time, it's a waste of our tax dollars. I'm a CPA, a Texas CPA. I understand regulations and following principles and codes and all those different things. Not an attorney, but I'm a CPA. And I work in healthcare, which is even worse. It has a lot more regulations. So I follow all these things, and I have to do them. There's always an opportunity to come together and to make the right thing right. And what needs to happen is we need to get this thing put to bed, set aside, give Mark the variance. He's willing to do, he's already offered, he's sat up here and said it to y'all, I will do whatever it takes to make sure that this has no impact on this gentleman. He'll take care of the water problem, he'll cut back on the overlap, he'll do all those things to make it right. He's not arguing that. He's arguing that removing it or taking it back to 2 foot, it's useless, then why even have it? And then we have other problems as we'll discuss from the safety and all the other issues. I would ask that y'all consciously look at this situation, look at all the people that are involved, all these people that have showed up here. That's the kind of community, that's the type of neighborhood that we live in. We all need to work together. We need to sit down together and work this out. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you. At this time, one last chance, everybody in the audience wants to do a form to speak real quickly. I see no one jumping up for that. Okay, it's
Can I add anything to the?
I think once you've already been up, you know, I learned a long time ago, this time is to stop. Currently, it is, what, 8:40? 8:36, the public hearing is closed. For the adjustment members, it's our time to talk here, us among ourselves. Anybody have any questions, statements, opinions, motions? I'm here to listen. And again, remember, everybody can participate, but when it comes time to motions and voting, it's only the full members right now.
I have a question. What is the current value of the structure?
According to Rockwall CAD, it's under $400. That's what they're appraising it at. To build it was obviously to build it originally was more than that. To replace it, so if we lose the 5 feet, to replace it, only location I have is in that 40-degree sloped backyard, which I've actually did try to talk to several contractors, and most of them said they don't want to have anything to do with it. They said it'll never last, you won't be able to maintain it, or they're telling me, $20,000 or more to build something of equal size. So there's a lot of issues with building it in another place. It's not movable.
I have one more question.
Just you're fine, but for the audio, because this has been recorded, come on up and answer a question would be best. Thanks, sorry.
You're fine. The other question I have, someone mentioned something about an ordinance about restricting views. Is there someone with city staff
I mentioned that.
that can address that about views being obstructed? What is that ordinance? Okay. I'd like to understand that a little bit more. Thank you.
There were several iterations of take area regulations. Can you hear me now? So there were several iterations of the take area regulations that started out with, and I know that there were 3 versions that were adopted. The version that was originally approved did require a site visibility easement. That particular requirement was removed in the 2004 ordinance, so it does not exist at this time.
Okay, so just as an instance, if another shed were constructed on the lot and it blocked views of the lake, would that be in violation of any codes or ordinances?
It would not.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding is that there is still an active view corridor, but I believe in the packet I did show a property outline of where the shed would have to be moved, and I guarantee it will obstruct the neighbor's view.
I really would like the clarification from city staff on that.
Yes, as I stated, the original ordinance that outline take area regulations did have a view corridor that was repealed in 2004.
And the original shed was built in 2004. So all of my documents on that still show view corridors. And it was, for several reasons, both neighbors requested when I moved in, please don't block our view, right? And absolutely, we don't want to block anybody's view, we want to block my own view. And because of the slope, there was no other place to put it. I had to either pick the north side of the house or the south side of the house. The south side of my house is even smaller. I think it's only 6 foot width. The north side is only 7'3", so I don't have a lot of places. It's north side or the south side. That's it. That's the only
Okay.
condition.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Right?
I'm just going to make a statement, I guess, about this. I drove by his house today. I went out and drove by, checked out the building as I went by. Only reason I can say building is because it says it's a building in here. But I would think if he was to move that, you're still going to have the outside of it, because that is a nice vinyl fence. That's what I saw. It was a very nice vinyl fence. If he moved the building, all he would do is take the roof off, and you still got the vinyl fence. So I support him. I think he's got a nice thing, because like I said, the fence is going to be there anyway. So based on that, I support him.
A few observations here. A question to the applicant. Did you lease the take line?
Yes, I did.
When did you lease the take line?
Believe the year, you want me to put it in my?
It'd be best, please. Sorry.
I'll just sit here. The lease back of the property was done immediately after the city of Rowlett opened it up for lease. I actually sat in a lot of the council meetings with the different cities in the city of Dallas. I don't remember the exact date when Rowlett was the first city to do the lease backs. I have the forms at home, but I don't remember the exact date. I'm guessing 2001, 2002?
Okay. General comment. One, I believe, or the other board members up here, the handout from his attorney, the applicant attorney, I believe that has to do with what we called at the time the unified or code, development code. There was a code long before that. That 5-foot setback rule has been there a long time. When that was even brought in to be planted on the zoning. The second thing is, if I understood correct, before he leased the take line, and I happened to be part of the take line committee, but I was on PNC at that time, that does not affect his backyard. And while I appreciate the applicant trying to work with his next door neighbor at the time and other neighbors and preserving, their view of the lake back there, and many of his neighbors that have come to his support. Nevertheless, the building was built and then modified over the square footage, and I don't see where he ever approached the city about getting permission to violate the 5-foot setback of the property line. And although it's been many, many years, it's still been in the city, and that same rule has still been there. And his neighbor is right next door, and I can't support at this point the variance.
So, the issue,
Okay.
when the permit.
Do you have a question to a family?
No.
Gentlemen? Yeah.
I'd like to ask the applicant to clarify with the presentation of this piece of paper. Are you making a claim that the city did not have a setback requirement when you built this? Can you clarify why this was provided to us?
So when I originally built the shed in 2004, enlarged it another 100 square feet. So originally it was around 120. I asked if I needed to take out a permit. I took out other permits that year. I was informed, you don't need a permit for a shed. So it wasn't checked. I'd already paid for permits that year. They had said, well, you need a permit, we would have checked the box. We didn't do it because it wasn't required. In 2016, I needed more space. So I talked to the city. Lake Scott, I believe, was the individual at that time. And again, I asked him, I'm going to enlarge it, do I need a permit? And he said, you do not. And then we do over, 200 feet. I tried not to go over 200 feet. I think I used one side of the calculation, so I kind of missed that a little bit. But I was trying to stay under the 200. Again, no permit was required, so there was really no conversation on making sure I have, you have this setback, so it wasn't utilized. And only until really recently, through Dale, that this seems to be the requirement for the setback. I'm told that was for, and it varied whether it was multifamily or single family, and that's from talking to the fire marshal of Rowlett. That was really the only issue. He actually came out, he inspected, not really inspected, he came out and looked at the shed, did measurements from the street, distance for hose lay. He was satisfied that there was no issues. We had this conversation with senior management of Rowlett. Only two issues the city has is the 1.5 inch overhang with a metal roof. And my house has a metal roof. So the metal roof is allowed. That can be easily corrected to everybody's satisfaction and will be permitted and will be inspected by Rowlett. The bordering wall, which is also a privacy fence, will be upgraded to a UL 1 hour fire rating, which I'm sure Dale will probably be the one that inspects it or somebody in his department.
Can you clarify, are you making a claim that the city did not have a setback requirement when you built the shed?
None that I was informed of. Well, if I wasn't informed, I really didn't know how to do it. If I would have had to, I would have had a 2-foot area. I wouldn't have built it there. It would have been silly. Really can't do anything with 2 feet. I can't even put that's 24 inches, I can't even put a push mower in there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Another question for
Yes.
to the applicant. You've mentioned this, I want to make sure that we're all together here. When you ask for a building permit, is that correct?
I asked for a shed building permit. I was informed none was required. I believe my chief document, 3619, actually shows that permits were not required for 120, and Rowlett, the one was an international code of 120, and there was a Rowlett code of 200. No permits were required. Because of the proliferation the city knew about, that was changed in December 2019. I believe there is a copy in your packet that was signed by the city lawyer, city council, and mayor, I believe, city secretary.
So you asked for a building permit and were told none was needed.
I was told at that time a permit wasn't needed.
You never asked about setbacks.
I never asked about setbacks, I was never informed about setbacks. I didn't know to ask.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'd like to ask a question to, I guess, the neighbor. In the presentation, your attorney representative gave most of the statements were pertaining to items other than the setback that you object to. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I understood exactly what you said. I don't recall the setback as an issue. It was the other issues with the structure.
Respectfully, we do believe the setback is an issue. There's a reason there's a setback issue, right? It allows for, quite frankly, if there was a fire, they could knock down a fence to get through.
But that's not what I asked you. I asked you if, in your presentation, did you say the setback was an issue for your client? But I don't recall you mentioning that. It was the water, it was just, you didn't like the look of it, or things like that, and the fire safety. I don't think you said the setback specifically.
I hope that I did. I did try to abbreviate everything that I wanted to say because I only had 3 minutes. And so to be frank, I have a list like this long of all the things I wanted to talk about and didn't get to because I wanted to be respectful of your time.
Okay, all right. So it wasn't on the top of the list. It was other issues. Okay. That's all I needed to know. Thank you.
May I comment?
No, I don't think so. I think
Okay. Yeah, we can put questions out, we can take it back in at this point in time.
I think.
Tony, Brownie, Stanley, Donna, any last comments?
I'll make a last comment. City attorney may tell me I shouldn't say it. I was on PNC from 94 to 2000, or excuse me, from 95 to 2005. I can assure you there were setbacks. Even prior to this one that was referenced in 2006, because I sat on that committee as part of P&Z when we came up with a unified code presented to the council in 2006 and voted on. Secondly, I was also there for the take line, and the issue here, as I see it, in the comments made by the applicant, has nothing to do with the take line. It's his backyard, which is totally out of the purview of the city of Dallas, as the take line is in the purview of the city of Dallas. And lastly, I see this as two different things. You've got setback requirement that's through the zoning and subdivision ordinances at the time, and you've got a building code issue for permits to actually build it, which is absolutely separate.
Hey, thank you, Stanley. We got enough talking now. Anybody have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance request.
Okay, Tony's made a motion, second?
I'll second.
Okay, by Browning. So we have a motion to approve by Tony, and a second by Browning. Requires a vote of 4 in favor to pass. Anything less than that is denied. At this time, I guess we call the vote. Looks like we came up with 3 in favor and 2 against. So that, unfortunately, the motion did not pass. Mr. Attorney, I called it correctly?
75% minimum is required to approve a variance, and that is not 75%, you're correct.
Okay. So at this point in time, no other motions or activities can be taken by this board, and I can understand tensions, but we have to stop at that. So at 9 o'clock, the Board of Adjustment is closed, is adjourned.